Hey guys, this is Bama. I've never done one of these before. I've mainly just posted these top 10 videos here on YouTube, but there's something I really want to get off of my chest right now. A lot of people have left me comments about my choices in my videos. One of the things that strikes me is the majority of the comments are about how many older games I include in my countdowns. I'm getting a lot of one-star ratings and nasty comments about how Sephiroth is the greatest villain of all time and that Final Fantasy 7 and 10 are the best. And yeah, I agree, they're pretty good games, but I remember sitting down in front of my TV and playing Final Fantasy 6 and Chrono Trigger. Think about it this way. You remember the Nintendo 64 kid? I did the same thing when I got my Super NES. My grandmother bought it for me Christmas in 1993. And she got it at Lowe's, the home improvement store. Yeah, I know that's kind of weird. But many of the choices in my videos are based on my youth. And they're still games that I play to this day. I grew up with titles like Final Fantasy II, Secret of Mana, Super Mario RPG, Earthbound, Legend of Zelda: Link to a Past, Super Metroid, Street Fighter II, and a slew of others too numerous to mention. I love my SNES. Still to this day, I don't think there's ever been a greater console created. Yeah, the graphics have gotten better since then, but the SNES had staying power, real staying power. Nintendo produced 785 games between 1991 and 1998. The Nintendo 64 came out in 96, and the SNES was still producing games. To date, 50 million units have been sold. That's twice as much as the original Xbox and Nintendo 64. You know, to put it in perspective, the PlayStation sold 75 million, and that's just 25 million more than the Super Nintendo. And the PlayStation was win. So yeah, I had all of these amazing games until Pat Robertson told my mother to take them away from me for being demonic. Anyway, I enjoy many newer titles. I deeply enjoyed games like Final Fantasy XII and Metal Gear Solid 4. They're great games, but I just don't go back to them as often as I do games like Chrono Trigger and Final Fantasy VI. To me, they just don't have the same oomph, whatever, as the older games did. You know, sadly my Super Nintendo is now dead. It turned yellow. My little brother colored it with a Sharpie, and the controller cords were exposed and frayed. Luckily, Square Enix released many of my favorite Super Nintendo titles on the PlayStation, but there's still, I really don't have a whole lot of anymore, and I thank God for ZSNES. Anyway, I was also a huge fan of my PlayStation. I don't go back to it as often as I did my Super Nintendo, but titles like Chrono Cross, Final Fantasy VIII, and the Lunar Complete series games were complete win. Oh man, I loved them. I also played the hell out of Crash Bandicoot 2 and Hot Shots Golf, but those kind of disappeared. I had the N64 and I played Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time, GoldenEye, and Donkey Kong 64, but it's almost like a fleeting memory for me. It just didn't last. Times change. My roommate has an Xbox 360 and I have a PS3. A couple of months ago, my 13-year-old brother, the one who drew on my Super Nintendo as a kid, was staying with me for the weekend. He was on the computer playing World of Warcraft, which I absolutely love playing, while I decided that I was going to play Final Fantasy VII. I wanted him to see the scene where Aerith got skewered. When it was over, I asked him what he thought. They look like Legos. And he went right back to WoW. It just looked stupid to him. But that's because his Super Nintendo was a PlayStation 2. He was used to voice acting and fully interactive 3D backgrounds, and that's cool. It's not for me. So anyway, my roommate is a month older than me, but he had the same feelings for his N64, but he's also one of those people who got caught up in the mad dash for the new consoles. I started playing through Chrono Trigger about a week ago for old time's sake. He saw me playing it and he said, "My iPhone has better graphics than that." He laughs at me every time he sees me playing it. But unlike him, I can't play Halo 3 on Xbox Live and Guitar Hero for hours at a time like he can. It drives me insane, and I can't figure out why. Anyway, the point is, I'm not going to attack you for your favorite game, so don't attack mine. I just don't see the appeal of characters like Cloud. Just because he's got a big sword doesn't give him a free pass when it comes to character development. You know, plus he's a liar. Anyway, I think Chrono is a great hero, and the guy doesn't even talk. It's the same thing with Locke. His devotion to Celeste and his emotional turmoil over Rachel give him amazing reason to keep on in his fight. Yeah, I understand that a lot of the games released on the SNES were Double Dragon clones, but a lot of the new games now are just Halo clones. A game does not have to be cutting edge to be amazing. On one of my videos, I got a comment comparing Final Fantasy VII to Final Fantasy X. The guy said, "Personally, I prefer 7 and 10, with the latter being slightly superior due to actual dialogue and graphics. But then again, it's like comparing a book to a movie. Furthermore, I don't see why people rate these games for their specific era of release. I wouldn't recommend Final Fantasy VII to someone nowadays because in contrast to other games that are out there today, it just doesn't match up." So I responded to him. So what's Final Fantasy I, a cave painting? And with your comment, you prove you fundamentally misunderstand everything Final Fantasy is about. Final Fantasy, the original one, is an amazing game. It didn't need CGI cutscenes to make it one of the greatest games of all time. It didn't need voice acting. Hell, it hardly even had a story because it was too hard to fit the text on the cartridge. If you don't like retro gaming like I do, I could honestly care less. There's a lot of new games out there that are great, but the vast majority of them refuse to think outside of the box, and that just pisses me off. Just please respect my opinion and stop spamming with how badass Sephiroth is because he has a big sword, because he also has an Oedipus complex.